The sun was rising timidly over the Ukrainian city of Khmelnytsky, painting the sky in golden hues while life went on in the narrow, winding streets. It was against this backdrop of ephemeral beauty that Oksana Masters came into the world on June 25, 1989, in the hustle and bustle of Khmelnytsky General Hospital. But the joy that normally surrounds the birth of a child was overshadowed by the shadow of the nuclear disaster that had struck Chernobyl just 3 years earlier. It was precisely because of this that Oksana came into the world with deformed legs and feet, a cruel consequence of the radiation that permeated the region. Her parents, haunted by the prospect of raising a child with such complex needs, made the inhumane decision to leave her right there in hospital, hoping that others would look after her better than they could. It was an act of abandonment that threw Oksana into a world of uncertainty and pain from the first moments of her life. While the cries of newborn babies filled the hospital corridors, Oksana was handed over to the care of busy nurses, whose compassionate gazes could barely hide the sadness they felt for the little girl who was already beginning her battle for life alone. And so, between wheezing machines and sterile corridors, Oksana's journey began in a world that seemed determined to test her courage and resilience from the first breath. In her very first months of life, Oksana faced a series of painful medical treatments as they tried to find ways to correct the deformities affecting her legs and feet. Each appointment, each procedure, was an ordeal for little Oksana, whose inner strength was tested at every turn. Meanwhile, in the corridors of the hospital, the murmurs of staff and patients reflected the sadness and concern that hung over Oksana's situation. Some wondered about the fate of the girl abandoned by her parents, while others commented on the cruelty of the world that allowed such a young child to suffer so much. It was amidst this atmosphere of conflicting emotions that Oksana began to show signs of her unwavering determination. Despite the pain and discomfort, she never gave up the fight, clinging to life with a tenacity that surprised even the most experienced doctors. Her gaze, although still innocent, already reflected a fierce determination, a determination that refused to be broken by adverse circumstances. Meanwhile, Gay Masters, an American therapist with a generous heart and a passion for helping others, was thousands of kilometers away, completely oblivious to little Oksana's existence. However, fate had surprising plans for both of them, plans that would bring them together on a journey of transformation and redemption that would change their lives forever. While Oksana was fighting for her life in Khmelnytsky Hospital and then being sent from one orphanage to another, across the ocean in a quiet town in the interior of the United States, Gay Masters was going about her daily routine as a therapist, dedicated to helping her patients overcome their physical and emotional challenges. Gay was known for her empathy and her ability to inspire hope even in the darkest moments, but she couldn't have foreseen the impact that one decision would have on her life. One day, while checking her email between appointments, Gay came across a message that immediately caught her attention. It was a desperate plea from a humanitarian organization, asking for help for a Ukrainian child with severe leg deformities who was fighting for his life in a local orphanage. Somehow beyond human comprehension, something in that plea touched Gay's heart deeply, awakening an irresistible compassion and desire to make a difference in the life of that unknown child. Years before, Masters, stricken by a relentless depression, had practically given up on his own life, his career almost collapsing because of his illness. All this was made worse when, in the midst of this battle, Masters lost his mother, the only person he trusted. When the situation seemed more serious than ever, Gay even attempted to take her own life, only to wake up the next day in hospital. She didn't know how much time had passed. She couldn't even remember what had happened. But in her eagerness to take her own life and by taking the medication she thought would end her suffering, it didn't end her existence. It just made her faint. Luckily, John Thornton, her neighbor, noticed that Masters hadn't left the house that morning, and when he knocked on the door and got no answer, he jumped over the wall and found Gay passed out through the window. Frightened by the thought of death, he called the police, who soon arrived and, realizing that she was not dead, but passed out, took her urgently to the nearest hospital. It wasn't until 3 days later, after several stomach cleanses, detoxes and IVs, that Masters finally woke up. As she finished recovering in the hospital bed, an elderly man with terminal cancer stood next to her and asked, "Daughter, what have you been running away from?" Masters couldn't say, and although her voice had returned, she preferred to remain absolutely silent. She never knew the man's name, as she never saw him again the following day. Before he left the hospital last night, he heard on television that a nuclear accident had occurred in faraway Ukraine. Masters didn't know it, but despite being an ocean away, it would forever impact his life. The next 3 years were an uphill battle for Masters. She had to work hard to recover mentally and even harder to get her career back on track. Now, she was practically recovered from everything that had happened to her, and it was because of this that when she heard about the little abandoned Ukrainian child, she had no doubts. Without hesitation, Gay made an impulsive decision, guided by her heart. She would go to Ukraine and help that child, whatever the cost. Meanwhile, in Khmelnytsky, Oksana continued her lonely battle from orphanage to hospital, unaware that her fate was about to change irrevocably. As she faced each challenge with a courage that left the doctors in awe, her eyes, now brighter than ever, reflected a fierce determination that, even at such a young age, seemed to defy even death itself. Until one day, while she was resting in her lonely crib at the orphanage, a strange presence quietly entered the room. Oksana raised her eyes and met the gentle, compassionate gaze of Masters, who watched her with a mixture of surprise and admiration. At that moment, fate brought together two souls destined to find hope and redemption in the deepest darkness. Masters stood outside Oksana's room, watching the little fighter with a mixture of indescribable emotions. Her blue eyes, normally so penetrating and confident, now reflected an overwhelming vulnerability, but not like when she faced oppression, but the vulnerability of those who are surrendered to life. She slowly approached the crib, her footsteps echoing softly in the silence of the room. "Hello, little one," she said, her soft, welcoming voice breaking the silence. "My name is Gay. I've come here to help you." Little Oksana looked at her curiously, her big brown eyes shining. She wasn't used to the presence of strangers apart from the various nurses and staff from the hospital and orphanage who came to help her from time to time in her lonely world. But there was something in Gay's expression that reassured her. Gay smiled gently at her, reaching out to gently stroke her cheek. "You're a warrior, aren't you?" he murmured, more to himself than to her. "I can see it in your eyes. You're stronger than you think." Oksana watched the woman with a certain fascination, seeming to absorb her words with surprising intensity. She obviously didn't understand in spoken language what she was saying, but something in her voice conveyed a sense of security and comfort that she had never experienced before, and she could feel it all. While Gay talked to Oksana, the staff watched from afar, amazed at how Gay's presence seemed to bring a new light into little Oksana's eyes. It was as if, for the first time in a long time, she was getting a glimpse of hope amidst the darkness that surrounded her. Forgetting about his life in the United States, Gay Masters plunged headlong into caring for and being with Oksana. And when he wasn't dealing with the legalities of adoption, he spent the rest of the hours beside her crib, telling her soft stories and singing lullabies to calm her down during difficult times. As the bond between the two grew stronger, Gay realized that she could no longer bear the thought of leaving Oksana alone again, and that she had to find a way to adopt her. But the big stumbling block was that she couldn't easily take her to the United States, and the adoption operation was completely stalled because of this. Masters was distressed by this. She couldn't bear the separation. It was then that a bold decision began to form in her mind. She had a comfortable life in the United States, but her heart told her that her place was with Oksana. She couldn't just return home and carry on as if nothing had happened. Gay then made a radical decision to adopt the girl. She was willing to move to Ukraine. Gay was more determined than ever to give Oksana the family and love she so deserved. That radical decision was taken with extreme conviction, and because of this, because they realized that Masters was really willing to take care of the little girl, she was finally told that she could take her with her to the United States. There would be no need to move her whole life there. That night Masters cried with emotion, while Oksana had to remain at the orphanage under the care of the staff. Masters decided to stay there by her side for as long as possible, barely sleeping or eating, while all the bureaucratic details were sorted out, and Gay endlessly planned a new life for her and Oksana in the United States. She knew it would be a huge challenge, especially considering Oksana's special needs, but she was willing to face any obstacle for her sake. Last night, Masters didn't leave the hospital where Oksana was admitted for basic procedures due to her physical limitations. The next day, she knew that the documents needed to complete the adoption would come out, and so she decided to stay there, as close to the girl as possible. In the corridors of the hospital, she walked impatiently from one side to the other, as if she was counting the seconds on the clock with every step she took. That's when she came across a gentleman, almost hidden in the shadows of the dim corridor of the hospital. "I'm glad you've finally decided to stop running away." Masters shuddered, but again didn't say anything and didn't see the gentleman again after he came in with the nurse. She stayed the night, and that morning, when the adoption papers were finally released, she ran towards the little girl and held her in her arms for the first time, feeling that she really was her daughter. Emotions were running high. Oksana, now almost a year old, looked around with curious eyes, not sure what to expect from this new chapter in her life. Gay, for his part, felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety as he boarded a plane with his new daughter by his side. As they landed on American soil, Gay looked at Oksana with a shaky smile. "Welcome to your new home, Oksana," she said, holding her small hand tenderly. "As of today, we're officially a family." And so, at the end of that day, back at their home, as the sun set over the horizon, Gay Masters and Oksana Masters began their journey together, ready to face all the challenges that fate had in store for them. For Oksana, The transition to her new life in the United States was full of challenges and exciting discoveries. Everything was new and different, from the language she heard around her to the friendly faces that visited her in her new home. Although she still bore the scars of her difficult past, the little girl now had a less uncertain future ahead of her. Meanwhile, Gay Masters plunged headlong into the role of mother, facing the challenges of caring for a child with special needs, and she did it all with extreme courage and dedication. She learned to change diapers, prepare adapted meals, and help Oksana start her physiotherapy sessions, always with a smile on her face and a heart full of love. But not everything was easy. There were, of course, moments of frustration and doubt, when Gay wondered if she was doing enough to help Oksana overcome the traumas of her past and build a happy and fulfilled life. At times she also felt overwhelmed by the responsibility of being Oksana's sole support, but she knew she couldn't give up, and in the midst of the day-to-day difficulties, she promised herself that she would do everything in her power to give her the life she deserved. As the years passed, Gay and Oksana built a strong and deep connection, based on love, trust, and mutual respect. They shared happy times together, whether it was playing in the park, watching movies, and celebrating Oksana's achievements at school and in sport. But there were also difficult moments, when the shadow of Oksana's past would rise again, bringing up painful memories and complex emotions. After all, it was difficult for the little girl to fit into a world where most children were not like her. But all those challenges and, in a way, the harshness of the world served to harden her, not to the point of making her bitter and disgusted with life, because Masters played an important role in these moments of uncertainty, supporting her daughter and cultivating in her an almost unbreakable self-esteem. However, in the midst of all the difficulties, one thing was clear. Gay Masters and Oksana Masters were more than just mother and daughter. They were soulmates, united by a bond that transcended time and space. And together, they were certain that they would face whatever challenges the future held, armed with love, courage, and determination. As Oksana grew up, she discovered a passion that would change her life in unimaginable ways: sport. When Gay took her to try out different adapted sports activities, Oksana found a new way to express her inner strength and unwavering resilience. Ever since she was a little girl, she had shown a fierce determination and an unwavering will to overcome the obstacles that life threw at her, perhaps as a way of showing not only others, but herself, that her conditions were not a determining factor and that she could indeed go beyond where most people went. It was in cross-country skiing that Oksana found her true calling. Even with her physical limitations and young age, she glided through the snow with a grace and determination that left everyone around her in awe. She discovered a freedom in movement, a sense of being alive that she had never experienced before. She was still only 6 years old when she discovered all the freedom of snow skiing, but just 2 years later came a blow. Oksana had to have her left leg amputated above the knee. But the little girl didn't give up, and with a prosthesis in place of her leg, she was soon skiing again and becoming as good as ever, surpassing all expectations. Gay, for her part, was amazed by Oksana's natural talent for skiing and decided to support her sporting journey more than ever with all her heart. She became even more of her biggest fan, cheering her on in every competition and offering unconditional support in every difficult moment. She knew that sport wasn't just a passion for Oksana. It was a way of expressing her true essence and inspiring the world with her incredible story of overcoming. However, 5 years after the first amputation, when Oksana was 13, there came another blow, another amputation, this time of her right leg. But she remained steadfast. Those obstacles were nothing in the life of a girl who had found her passion and had the support and commitment of her mother. As Oksana improved as a skier, she began to compete at higher and higher levels, taking on athletes from all over the world with fierce determination and unwavering courage. She became a recognized presence in adapted sport circles, inspiring others with her incredible story and exceptional talent. And then in 2018 came her crowning achievement, the world witnessing Oksana Masters' triumph at the Paralympic Winter Games in Pyeongchang. With a display of unparalleled skill and determination, she won the gold medal in cross-country skiing, solidifying her place as one of the most inspiring and admired athletes of her generation. But her journey of success was far from over. Oksana continued to compete in more and more competitions around the world, winning medals and breaking records with impressive regularity. She became a powerful voice for inclusion and equality in sport, using her platform to inspire others to pursue their dreams, no matter what obstacles they faced. Meanwhile, Gay Masters proudly watched her adopted daughter grow and succeed, knowing that she had played a key role in helping her reach her full potential. For her, Oksana was more than just a daughter. She was her greatest inspiration, her greatest achievement, and her greatest source of love and joy. That girl had saved her life, more than she had saved hers. Oksana Masters continued to compete. In 2022, she became the most decorated Paralympic athlete in history, and today she travels the world as a globally recognized personality giving talks about overcoming and motivating everyone with her story.